Hi, this is Terry from Bonsai Tree again, and today I want to introduce you to or show you this Zelkova that I have developed from a cutting. I think I purchased the cutting from a local nursery probably, I don't know, about 10 years ago. There is a blog, in fact, that I've written about it. It's on the website, so you can encourage you to read through that, because it shows you the process that I followed from cutting to this stage. Well, the design of this tree follows the the natural growing habit of Zelkova. If you have ever been to Japan or perhaps seen photographs of Zelkova as they grow out in the forests, not as street planting trees, because they're used extensively for that purpose in Japan as well, but out in the forest you'll actually find that they have this very tall growing habit, straight trunk with a canopy that reaches up into the sky. But I have taken this tree to numerous club meetings, bonsai club meetings, to a club that I was a member of, and it always elicited a lot of discussion. The length of the trunk to the sort of the proportions of the tree, and I always found it very interesting that nobody or very few people bothered to understand the feeling, the emotion, the aesthetic that I was going towards. But in fact, I'm not sure how many of you have seen this book. It was done by the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens of New York, and I think this was done, it's a long time ago, 1960s, 1970s. And I don't know how many there were in the series, but I have two of them. I can't even remember where I got them from, perhaps a second-hand bookshop. And they're wonderful little books. I mean, a lot of the techniques have changed in later years. The soil mixes, the way that we pinch junipers or should not pinch junipers, things like that. But they are still wonderful examples of trees, your flowering apricot or your mume trees. It shows a nice history of, or has a bit of a historical element to Japanese bonsai as it was practiced many years ago. But there was this one particular article, and I will show, I will also give you a little close-up. I'll do a scan of the photographs. But there was this article in here written by a Mr. Kano, and it was dealing with how to grow Japanese Zelkova bonsai from seedlings. And I very much followed the steps that he suggested to take and to develop these trees. And what really appealed to me by this gentleman's or of his trees was this very, very tall, slender, straight trunks. I mean, broom style is always is synonymous with a very straight trunk and a very even root spread, all roots emerging at the same level. But I love the very elegant feel of his trees, and I wanted to try to reproduce something like that. And this is my effort, the results of my efforts. And I must say, I also want to add that I watched a very interesting, I took part in a very interesting Zoom meeting where Boone Manikapovic was the main speaker at a club, and it was about developing Japanese black pine from seed. And he referred to the Bonsai Today magazine number 20. That Boone said, don't try and think you can do it better. Just follow the steps as they are laid out. They work. I often have people contacting me, coming up with all these very cool sounding techniques of how to develop a pine. You know, these are people that have using or employing techniques that have been practiced for for many generations before them, and they have made the mistakes and they've ironed them out and improved the processes. And I sometimes think that we don't give them enough credit for the effort that has gone into it. So anyway, I followed the steps as shown in this article, and this was the final result. How I started this tree off, as I mentioned earlier, was by cutting. So of course, when you're starting off a tree from a cutting, you already have to your advantage the fact that all of the roots will come out at the same level of the cutting. And we'll do a close-up in a moment of the radial root spread of this tree. It's a little bit wet now, so there's a bit of discoloration. But then the tree was also grown on a flat surface, just to force those roots to grow horizontally and then down into the ground. And now over time, these roots that are at the surface, I will expose more and more of them, and so that you can see them and appreciate them. But also the roots will fuse, and then they will increase the trunk, the flare of the trunk, and the fusion of that gives it increases the visual mass of the roots, which has a certain appeal. Obviously personal preference, but nevertheless. With broom style, it's very important that one has a very straight trunk which has no scars on it, and I achieved that by allowing the leader or the trunk, the cutting, to just develop vertically. And in fact, at one stage, I believe I staked it, so I had a piece of bamboo and I wrapped the trunk onto that to make sure that it was as straight as possible. So there was no major trunk chop in this tree. There's essentially no taper, but that is synonymous or characteristic of broom style anyway. And it was only when you get into the upper reaches of the tree that we then started to make the cuts. Today, what I'm going to do with this tree is firstly just to look at the current health. It's obviously, the leaves are starting to change colors. It's a little bit late, but they develop this characteristic red. The Zelkova does develop this characteristic red tinge before the leaves would fall off. So this is a good time to be doing this kind of so-called autumn work, although it's early winter. And I'm thus going to just be pruning off all the leaves. That this will reveal the structure of the tree, and then I can assess the structure much clearer, and then we would possibly look at removing some of the branches that are growing incorrectly into the tree, or bad angles, and then wiring the branches into a better position. And then also perhaps some of the branches, one of the things that I think is a problem with this tree at the moment is that some of the branches were I allowed some of the branches to become too thick, too coarse. And so I'm losing that light, airy feel that attracted me so much to the examples that I referred to earlier on in the article. And so I might look at replacing some of those coarser branches by cutting them out, and then replacing them with more delicate branches, which we will then use as part of the ramification in the canopy. So the first thing that I'll be doing now is to cut the leaves off, and I will be using a pair of defoliating shears. If you don't have a pair, then you can just use a nice sharp trimming scissors, because that'll also allow you, due to the shape of the scissors, to get into the structure of the tree quite easily. the tree has been defoliated, and we can now see exactly what's happening with the structure of the tree, and we can look for problem areas and consider how we are going to solve them. I just want to bring it into a little bit more of a neatly trimmed profile, so we're just going to cut some of these longer shoots off. This area over here is a bit of a problem. Essentially 4 growth points coming out of this same area. So that was pruned off, but we still now have 3 branches. And so this has resulted in a bit of a swelling here. And but these branches are also very coarse for this. If you look at the other branchlets in this same sort of zone of the tree, these branches are much thicker than these ones here. So the first consideration would be to just eliminate perhaps this back section, cut this back in there, and then further reduce one of these shoots to bring us back down to 2. But as I said, the problem is that this is still going to be a bit coarse, these branches. So I'm inclined to rather want to prune back this entire branch to around this point, I believe, and then continue to grow this and this branchlet up to fill this space. There were a number of branches that in turning the tree around, I could see that they were too heavy, too coarse for that area of the tree, and they were removed and have then been replaced with thinner, more delicate branches, which now need to fill up that space. And this is very much a technique, cutting back on deciduous trees, that you will use, not only on deciduous but on conifers as well, but it would just apply in a slightly different way. But this is how you would continue to improve the tree over many years, but without the tree becoming larger as in terms of physical size. Your finest branches, I didn't bother with wiring those, because those ones we can just train by selective pruning, pruning back to a specific bud that is pointing in the direction that you want new growth to develop into. But the main branches, that's important that they are positioned. This is the tree, the front of the tree, and there aren't, other than some of these cuts that are still healing, there aren't any visible scars, because very often these trees, deciduous trees, and in this case Zelkova, are displayed when they don't have leaves on them. You definitely want to try and keep as many scars to the back of the tree as possible. In spring, what's lovely about these trees is that they give beautiful red new leaves. So you'll get all these buds popping all over the place with beautiful fresh new red leaves. And if you've got any questions or any comments to make, please do so down below. and I'm trying to do more frequent videos, so please do subscribe as well to be notified when I do post something new. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you. Bye-bye.